This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. This Thursday's show begins with our cattle market update for the week from K-State livestock economist Glynn Tonsor. Glynn explains a rather sideways market, where feedyard net returns may fall in the coming year, and some updated tools that are readily available on AgManager.info. We follow up the cattle markets with K-State and University of Missouri Extension food safety specialist, Londa Nwadike. She explains what community-supported agriculture, otherwise known as a CSA, is and how most operate today. Londa provides great resources for those looking to get started. We end with this week's horticulture segment, where K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd shares information on insects to keep in mind as we prepare for spring in our gardens and landscapes in Kansas. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We're tuned back in now with K-State livestock economist Glynn Tonsor for this week's cattle market update. Glynn, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Samantha.
Absolutely. So let's talk through this week's cash cattle markets to start.
Yeah, AMS called 5 market price last Friday at 157 to 162, depends on exactly what class we quote, flat to up, depending on which of those you pick on the week before. They called the Dodge City feeder cattle market flat to up, a little bit more positive tone. So the two larger lots I wrote down for context for listeners is one lot was 301 head, weighing 778 pounds, came in at 184. A little heavier lot, 135 head, weighing 886, came in at 180. Each of those, as I said, would be flat, if not up a little bit on the week before. We'll flip us over to the board. So the CME contracts, April live cattle opened here on Tuesday. So we're doing this on Tuesday, so it opened just a little bit below 165. That's up about $1 over the past 10 days. And then March feeder cattle was 186.5, basically flat for the last 10 days. So kind of a mixed story depending on if we look to fed or feeder versus cash futures.
Sure. So not anything crazy this week in those markets, but in terms of box beef cutout, what did we really see this past week?
Yeah, so we have seen some strength there, which is encouraging. So on Monday, choice was 283. That's up almost $13 from the prior Monday. Select was 268, which was also up about $12 on the week, comparing Monday to Monday in that case. That is good to see. There's a lot of commentary about AI issues in the egg space, of course, that are well documented, but some chatter on whether that's going to spill more over to chicken in the months ahead and so forth. That's worth monitoring. We are getting very near strong stories on pull down on beef production. As 23 progresses, we're going to have that. So there's going to be some supply side support on multiple dimensions there for the cutout, and this past week was a good sign of that.
Yeah, are we going to continue to see this trend upwards, do you think, in the coming weeks ahead?
Yeah, I mean, there's always some seasonality to that. So we're closing out February. Basically, the next 4 or 5 months, we have patterns of people starting to grill. So you and I are talking here in glorious Kansas, where the weather changes every 27 minutes. But further south, the grills are already going in some places. My brother lives in Austin, so I mean that's already being talked about. I'm highlighting that because there is seasonal strength to beef demand, typically tied to the grills between now and, say, the 4th of July. If we ignore all other issues like geopolitics and so forth, that tends to drive some higher box beef prices. Choice select spread in particular tends to widen, consistent with that. So my best guess for our listeners today is, yes, we're going to see some bounciness, but I think we'll see higher beef prices as the months ahead develop. My biggest pause on that would be if consumers step away from paying higher prices, which we'll get to in a minute.
Absolutely. And kind of the opposite of the spectrum when we're thinking about, increasing demand for box beef. Demand's increasing, but there's just not supplies maybe for is kind of the feedlot sector of our industry. So what did the latest feedlot returns show?
Yeah, and what you're alluding to there is hoof count, right? So we've been shrinking the herd. So the number of animals available to run through the feedlot sector is shrinking as we speak. Keep that in mind because I'm going to share some per head numbers, which don't equate to per operation if you can't run the yard full. And that's really important in the next probably at least 2 years to keep in mind. But your listeners probably know I put out monthly this barometer of feedlot returns. It's on our AgManager website. The last numbers were as of February 9th. So that's what I'm referencing here. Positive net returns are projected for each month between now and October when steers would be leaving. The largest projected returns are in that April to June period. And that coincides with what is projected to be maybe not the peak, but definitely the bulk of the increase in fed cattle prices. But importantly, before the incoming animals get more expensive. So I'll just talk us through like April closeouts. So steers leaving Kansas yards in April are projected to make $114 per head. Underneath that is a presumption that we paid $171 for the incoming feeder, and we got $165 for them going out as heavyweights, and the cost of gain was about $135. If you look out to say August, that projected return is $85 a head. Cost of gain actually improves. The fed cattle price is basically the same, slightly down, but we've eroded the margin because the incoming animal, the feeder that we placed, we paid $14 a hundredweight more for. So this is a margin enterprise, and when you pay more for them coming in, that's going to squeeze those margins unless we manage to push the output price or we gain a lot on cost of gain. So I threw a lot at our listeners there. They can go to AgManager and dive into that more. But per head returns are expected to be pretty positive in the next few months.
Yeah, those charts are really easy to read through and to understand. So I'll be sure to link to those in today's show notes, of course. And some other resources that I'll link to as well are some decision aids on AgManager that you've updated recently, right?
Yeah, so I want to highlight two of them here. Most of our listeners probably remember Kevin Duvetter, used to be in our department, was very good at building Excel-based decision tools. I maintained several of them that he originally built. So I give him credit as the original builder of one called K-State Feeder Cattle Risk Management Tool. It's kind of a mouthful to describe that, but that is an Excel-based decision aid for anybody that's selling feeder cattle, whether it's a calf, a yearling, whether you're a cow-calf or stocker backgrounder, and you're interested, I call it the do-nothing to cash market approach versus CME futures versus a CME put option versus USDA's insurance product, LRP, how they compare in alternative pricing strategies. So this tool is designed to help you make a more informed decision. I've updated that to reflect what's called the current feeder cattle situation. I hope that's helpful for folks. The second decision aid actually is a bit of an aside, but it's from the hog space. Mike Tokash over in Animal Science, many of our listeners probably know as well. He and I, early in the pandemic, built something called the KSU Hog Contract Evaluation Tool, because there's a lot of commentary about how hog producers were pricing their hogs. We've updated that resource. Basically, you can bring in different weights or percentage components on an offered formula, like a contract that somebody produces hogs would be offered based on the Western Corn Belt USD hog price, the National Pork Cutout, or the CME Lean Hog Index. Those are all three candidate components of a marketing agreement. And you can use this Excel tool to compare historically. I think we built it since 2014. You pull data back that far, how alternative contracts would have worked for your operation. The point there is to help allow folks, when they're reevaluating or potentially re-upping their agreement, in this case with a packer that buys hogs, at least backward looking recently, how these would have compared. So two different Excel-based decision tools. Both you can find on our AgManager website. You can go to the contributors tab, pull up my name, and you'll find them in reverse chronological order because they've been updated in the last 10 days as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll link to those as well. And the hog contract evaluation tool, that's really timely because you spoke recently, not so long ago, at the Swine Profitability Conference, right? And shared some insight with those folks there.
I did, and that slide deck's there. Actually, on YouTube, you can find the full recording. And I actually found a picture where you were taking pictures of others and, caught the back of me. So I didn't even know you were in the room until afterwards. But no, that was a good meeting. And all jokes aside, all those resources are available both through our AgManager website and through KSU's Animal Science and Industries Department as well.
Yeah, it was a great overview and outlook of the year ahead for swine producers specifically, kind of, not ebbing into fears for them per se, but just making them aware of some things to come. So if there's any swine producers tuning in, that is a great resource to check out. And I'll be sure to link to that as well.
Besides the fear of having to listen to an economist for 45 minutes, I'm free with that.
No, it was a great conversation. I feel like the crowd was lively and they were engaged.
No, it was good. It's always good to have lunch to bait people to stay and listen to me. That's good.
Absolutely. So, Glynn, we've talked through a lot of things today, but there's so much still to look forward to in your schedule that you have coming up. So tell us about some of the events you have coming up ahead.
Yeah, so we're doing this here early this week. Next week, the February Meat Demand Monitor will be out. Obviously, we're still in February, we're still doing the data collection, but I normally bring insight from that when we're on this series. The reason I didn't do it today is we need to wait another week for the latest is available. Cattleman's Day, which is a big event on campus. It's a week from Friday, so on March 3rd. For our listeners that are, anywhere in the beef cattle space, I encourage them to attend that. I will be giving a outlook talk, and then I thoroughly enjoy kind of walking the room when we're done. We usually have some good brisket or the like for lunch afterwards. But I encourage folks to come attend, not just my session, just more broadly that whole event. There's several good talks that are on the docket. Those are on the radar in the next 10 days.
Absolutely, yeah. Cattlemen's Day is going to be a great opportunity to hear from you, of course, and some other K-State experts. And then the Legacy Sale is also, I believe, either that day or that weekend. So that's a full-time event for Manhattan this upcoming several weeks.
It is, and hopefully we continue to have some nice weather. Maybe we'll have a few more K-State basketball wins between now and then that we can celebrate, and everybody enjoy wearing their purple.
Absolutely. Here's hoping. Go Cats. Well, Glynn, as always, thanks so much for joining us today and for all the insight you've provided.
Thanks for having me on, Samantha.
Absolutely. Once again, everyone, that was K-State livestock economist Glynn Tonsor joining us for this week's cattle market update. We're cutting to a short break now, but when we return, we'll be joined by our new K-State Senior Vice President for Executive Affairs, Marshall Stewart. Marshall joins us to share his background with working at other land-grant institutions, as well as partnering in extension programming, his belief in the important role of extension programming here at K-State, and his vision for K-State in the future. He's only been on the job for a month now, but it's fair to say that Marshall has quickly transitioned to bleeding purple with his passion for our university and its work. So that's an exciting conversation that you're not going to want to miss out on. We end with this week's horticulture segment where K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd shares information on insects to keep in mind as we prepare for spring in our gardens and landscapes in Kansas. Once again, we'll be back with that and more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are joined now by a very special guest. He is our newly named 30 days on the job now, Vice President for Executive Affairs here at K-State, and his name is Marshall Stewart. So before we get into our conversation on looking to the future at K-State, Marshall, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be with you, and certainly love the opportunity to talk about agriculture and all other things that you want to talk about at Kansas State and the state of Kansas as well.
Absolutely. So I think let's start with introducing you to our listeners first and foremost. You have an extension background at several different land-grant universities, and now you're here.
I am. I was very honored that President Linton asked me to join the team, and on January 23rd, I started my tenure here as Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff for him, working on executive affairs and really everything that's external for the university. If you think about a university having an internal and an external side, this is an opportunity to think about and to work on things like communications. How do we better articulate our message to our constituents, our 2.8 million citizens that live here in the state of Kansas? How do we amplify the work we do in engagement and outreach? How do we do that? How do we think about partnerships in a different way? And how do we do things that are going to make K-State all it can be and live up to its land-grant promise to really serve people? So looking back at the past history of working at North Carolina State University for over 21 years, I'm a native North Carolinian. I'm not a Tar Heel. There's a difference. But having the opportunity to work there for so many years, my alma mater, then having the chance 6.5 years ago to join the University of Missouri and become a Tiger to help them at a very difficult time in their history in 2016 as they were coming on the heels of some very tough times they had a 37% drop in enrollment, and to help them work through creating a new narrative for their university and to build support for that institution through the work of extension, engagement, outreach, to really tie that together not only for Columbia, but the city of Columbia and University of Missouri Columbia, but also the other three campuses of the system, to be able to be a part of that and to have the joy in watching people come back and see investments from the state go up to its highest level that it had ever been. That's a remarkable thing to be a part of, and then to have the chance, as President Linton made the decision that he wanted me to come here and to join him as a part of this leadership team and to really help figure out how we make K-State all it can be for the people of Kansas. It's an exciting time. It's something, certainly those experiences at University of Missouri and at NC State inform me, but as I tell people here, this is about K-State. And how do we make K-State all it can be based on what we need here now? So while that work will inform me, in no way will we ever be black and gold or red and white here. We're purple, and we're going to be purple for the people of Kansas.
Absolutely. We bleed purple here in this part of the world, and excited to hear that you feel the same. Now you said 30 days to the day now that we're recording this that you have been on the job. So a quick transition for you.
It's been a really quick transition. Made the decision. I don't believe you should let things linger, and it's been exciting for the last 30 days to be here. Jan and I moved here, and I have not only been welcomed by the city of Manhattan, but the entire state of Kansas. Been around the state some already. I've been in Topeka quite a bit, learning about how they do government relations here and how we will do it in the future. Also been to Washington, D.C., spent some time in Wichita this week, and moving around the state, trying to get a better sense of how we can position the university to be a better servant leader for the state of Kansas. And I think that's what land-grant universities are all about, is to figure out what the needs of the state are and then align the institution as best we can to meet those issues head on and to, again, provide service to those 2.8 million citizens that really are my student body. When I think about Kansas State University, we have 20,000 plus students here, but really the student body from an external perspective are those 2.8 million people that we call Kansans, and it's our job to serve them.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're reaching your target audience here with this program. These are stakeholders tuning in now that are of extension background, so a lot involved in agriculture, but even outside areas too. So when we think of the future of K-State for these stakeholders, what are really some of the key things that you have in mind going forward?
Well, I think it first of all comes down to doing a lot of listening. As you probably know, President Linton has done a lot of that. He's been here a little over a year now. He's done community meetings across the state, continues to do those. There's a strategic planning process going on with the university right now that a lot of that input is feeding into. But I really think it's about institutions like K-State really have to figure out, number one, who you are and who you serve. And as I think about it, again, 30 days into the job, is that K-State's charter, if you go back to 1862 when the Land-Grant Act was passed, and then you look at 1863 when this one started as the first operational land grant in the country, which I think is a remarkable piece of history, I think it's really important that we shape it around the needs of Kansans, that we understand that if we do that in the right way, Kansans will support us, and that will enable us to do things not only in Kansas but nationally and around the world. I think you can be globally relevant by doing the right things in Kansas. So I think it's really important that we focus there. I think you're going to see us continue to be really strong in agriculture, for instance, and the bioeconomy. I mean, that's a huge area here. It's something that has got a lot of strength from the past. But I also think there's other things. You know, as we've been around the state now, and I've met with all the congressional leadership of the state, those folks in D.C., also meeting with legislators here, meeting with local folks here, being with Extension colleagues. I was in Wichita with a group of Extension professionals yesterday. And as I was visiting with them, you know, it's interesting that issues they talk about are things like the need for more child care, the need for affordable housing, our rural health. And those are issues that, as a land-grant university, we need to think critically about and say, okay, what are there things we can be doing to assist communities in those areas? And there's relevant areas. Is there interdisciplinary work between our College of Health and Human Sciences and maybe our College of Business that could help in the affordable housing area? Are there things in, again, College of Health and Human Sciences that could be working in this area of child care? Are there things that we could be doing in rural health, say in rural mental health? We've got capacity here and we've got people working on that. Are we delivering that in the most thoughtful way to help those people who need that help? Because in rural America today, there probably are few challenges any greater than mental health issues, and we see that. And so those are things that I think a contemporary, modern-day land-grant university needs to be thinking about. So you build the university not around us, but around them. It's not about us. It's about you. It's about those that are listening, those that are in the state, working hard every day. One of the things that we're working on right now is something called K-State 105, which is really a new drive toward, again, aligning the institution with the needs of communities across the state, and we're excited about that. I'm inheriting that. I mean, it was here when I got here and kind of getting off the ground. I think President Linton had announced it back in January. And so we're really thinking about, again, how do we meet the needs of people economically, educationally, and in their health at the community level. And if we do that with the great partnerships with Extension, with all of our colleagues on campus, our stakeholders, you have rabid alumni here that are engaged and want to help. All of us working together, we can do some big things, and I think that's the future of K-State.
It's a bright future for sure, and like you said, it starts here in our own backyard. And I feel like listeners, they know that. They regularly are interacting with their local agents or specialists, things like that. And that's a connection that I feel like that's the land-grant mission, right? That bridge. It's the opportunity that we signed up for.
Well, as I shared with agents yesterday, again in the Wichita area, that if you look at higher education today, in particular public universities, all universities out there are doing research at some level. All of them are doing teaching at some level. But there's a distinction about the land-grant university that you will not see anywhere else, and that's this thing called extension. This entity of extending knowledge, which is not just an idea, it is absolutely part of our mandate. It's a big idea in that it is something that can be within cooperative extension or be beyond it. We can do engagement across a huge platform here. Lots of things engaging across the state. I was in the College of Business this morning before I came over to meet with you, and they were telling me about things they're doing out in community and students going out and doing work. That's engagement. That's wonderful. What we need to do is tie all that work together, because that distinction of a land grant is that we go out where the people live. We serve them where they are. They don't have to come here because our campus is the state of Kansas. It's 105 counties. And so that's our campus. 2.8 million people are our student body. How do we serve? And what can we do to elevate the state of Kansas economically, educationally, and health, and do that in the lens of agriculture, using our 4-H capacities, for instance, in extension, using all those different partners we have, be it Farm Bureau, be it the commodity organizations, whoever it is, partnering with them in a way that really elevates this institution and thereby elevates Kansas. It's all about Kansas. It's not about us.
As you were speaking there, thinking of the agents that you've interacted with, I love our extension agents. They are not only actively working every day to spread this information that's applicable for their stakeholders, but they are active members of those communities, and they know firsthand what they need.
Yeah, I've had a wonderful opportunity. If you go back in my history, I was state 4-H program leader in North Carolina and state FCS leader at the same time. I had a dual role there. So I worked with what we would call 4-H and family consumer science agents for many years. I had the opportunity also when I was at the University of Missouri. I was vice chancellor of extension engagement, which meant I was state director of extension. So worked across the span of agriculture and everything we did, community development, all the different aspects you can think about. And then, obviously, as you say, to come and work now in Kansas and have those connections to understand what they do every day. I think one of the things that's unique in K-State right now is you've got people in senior leadership who get extension. It's not just some abstract thing that we think about. We've lived it. It's a lived experience. I've got 20 plus years now working in extension before coming here. So I understand it. I get it. I know what it's about. I understand the complexities of county and state and federal relationships. I understand what Smith-Lever Act is all about and how that federal money back in 1914 put us into being. But I also believe it can be something bigger and more expansive today than ever. And I think there's a critical need of tying together in a very tight way. I shared this with the agents yesterday. I know that they do work through the lens of K-State Research and Extension, but I also reminded them that every single day their paycheck comes from K-State. And so they carry the brand. And what we need to do at this institution is wrap our arms around that more tightly and help them do a better job of that, because I believe their passion for K-State is there, their desire to serve is there, their communities love them. So let's figure out how to leverage that for the greater university. And so I'm looking forward to working with them, to working with the leadership in Extension, to working with, obviously, the college and all those aspects to really enhance Extension and make it even more relevant in ways that we can to help the needs of Kansans.
It's fair to say K-State has a bright future ahead of it for sure. And Marshall, we're so excited to have you on board and on our K-State team here now. I haven't been here very long, but I feel like I can welcome you now to the team too. So we're more than happy to have you here. Well,
it's great for us to be here. And I say us because one of the things that I will tell you is I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jan Stewart's willingness to go with me. I tell people this all the day. It's not a me decision. It's a we decision. And we do that because we believe this is the next place for us to serve, to lead, and to grow others. If you think about the career that I've had, starting out as an agriculture teacher, moving my way into working for National FFA for a long time, having the opportunity to be State Director of Ag Education at NC State, and then moving into Extension at NC State, and then going to Mizzou, and now coming here. All of those things gave me the opportunity to lead, serve, and grow others. And that's what the work I do at the institution is all about. It's a platform of leadership, of service to others, and to help other people grow. And if we can do that by growing the economy, growing educational access, growing health and wellness and communities of the state, that's good work. And that's the passion of why I believe the land-grant institution is so important. And I'm so forever thankful in my life that 3 agriculture teachers in my life intersected with me when I was in the 9th grade and said, "You're going to North Carolina State University." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand. You're going. And that forever changed my life because the land-grant university opened up a world to me as the first to ever do something like that in my family. And it changed my life. And because of that, I want to do that and have that opportunity to help others have that experience, be it at K-State or wherever it may be, but today at K-State. So I'm grateful to the opportunity to serve at K-State, and I look forward to what we can do in partnership with Kansans to make this state all it can be.
Wonderful. Well, Marshall, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been such a fun conversation and a great opportunity to get to know you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Once again, everyone, that was our new Vice President for Executive Affairs here at K-State, Marshall Stewart, talking about his new role and the future of K-State as he sees it. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. While insect pest activity probably won't be noticeable for several months, there are some early season pests to be aware of. K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd says that aphids and eastern tent caterpillar are normally the first to appear. He explains how to recognize and deal with insect pests in early spring. Raymond, spring is not officially here yet, but as we think ahead, we know that soon we'll start seeing some of those insect pests here and there, and those would be primarily the ones that overwintered that we maybe didn't get taken care of last year.
Yeah, there's here we are in February, and all of a sudden we're down to some cold temperatures again. But I know there's massive anticipation of potential pests to be that'll be out there. Aphids will be one of our earliest pests, especially when the new flesher growth comes out of plants. Eastern tent caterpillar will be present about April. Clover mites will be probably wanting to enter into the home. So those are some of the earlier insect and mite pests that might be a problem. And I just want to point out that you don't have to necessarily get out there with a pesticide to spray. Both aphids and eastern tent caterpillar can be dealt with the high-pressure water spray. Just dislodge the aphids, dislodge the nest of the eastern tent caterpillar, primarily in cherry or anything in the Rosaceae family early on, and don't spray until you really have to. So some early cultural or physical practices will alleviate having any harmful effects on some non-target organisms.
Are we going to see these primarily on the upper side or the underside?
Well, the aphids, they tend to feed mostly on the terminal growth, so you'll see them on the terminals. They'll be visible, and on the leaf undersides. The eastern tent caterpillar creates these nests in the crotches of trees, basically, so they're very visible. You go down the roads, I think 99 I go down, you'll see on the side these nests that are kind of wedged in the crotches of trees, and that's where the caterpillars hide, basically. And if you open it up, birds will basically be able to feed on them.
And if we do nothing, what happens later on in the season?
Well, like most insect or mite pests, doing nothing generally can result in damage. However, there can be cases where some of the beneficial insects, natural enemies, can manage populations like aphids, for example, and like I mentioned, birds for caterpillars. That's why the indiscriminate or use of pesticides may be counterproductive. But however, I must admit, the natural enemies may not manage the population sufficiently to reduce plant damage, and that's where you come in with maybe a high-pressure water spray. If you need to spray, you can use like an insecticidal soap or a mineral or neem-based oil. The soaps are desiccants, the oils are suffocants, and have no residual, so there's no side effects later on for natural enemies that want to come back and reside in those environments.
And you don't have to worry about damaging other plants as well.
You mean with the pesticides? Yeah, as long as you use them correctly and read the label. Let me repeat that, read the label. First of all, before you apply any pesticide, you want to make sure your plants are turgid and well watered. That's really important because we haven't got a lot of moisture, whether it be snow or rain. So make sure you water your plants beforehand and then you spray, because you can damage your plants more easily when they're under water stress. So you want to water beforehand so they're turgid, and then you're going to minimize the effects of soaps and oils. And you're correct. Soaps and oils will cause damage on some plants that are experiencing stress.
You mentioned the beneficial insects before, and you actually have a couple of new publications out that people can check out.
Yeah, we have 2 new extension publications. One is on Eretmothus aurymicus. Say that 5 times fast. That's a parasitoid of the of whiteflies, primarily the sweet potato whitefly. And the other one is on an insidious flower bug. It's a predatory bug that feeds on western flower thrips and other insects. Last year, of course, we did row beetles, and I have 2 more coming on. And what's really interesting, these are really needed because we don't have a portfolio on these, and biological control is increasing in use. And having these extension publications will be extremely valuable to producers. Most of these for greenhouse production, but we have gone into outdoor gardens too. If you want to use these to enhance the biologicals, the beneficials, and consequently reduce your use of inputs from insecticides or miticides.
That's K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd with information on early season pests to be aware of. The 3 publications that Raymond mentioned are available through the K-State Research and Extension Bookstore at bookstore.ksre.ksu.edu, bookstore.ksre.ksu.edu. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.